All right, today's lesson for Wednesday, April 29th, 2015 is entitled, The Lord of the Sabbath. Now, in this study, we go to Luke chapter 6, where we see the Pharisees bring two accusations of breaking the Sabbath to Jesus Christ and the disciples. Now, let's take a look at the first accusation that the Pharisees brought to Jesus Christ. In Luke chapter 6, verses 1 to 5, Jesus and the disciples are walking on their way to the temple. And as they were going on their way, they were hungry. So what they did is each of them picked corn from a vineyard or a field that they were walking in, and then they rubbed it in their hands, meaning they pulled when you see corn that's growing in the field, it has those leaves on it. They pulled it back and then began to eat it. The Pharisees, they saw this and they accused Jesus Christ and the disciples of breaking the Sabbath. Now, they didn't break the Sabbath for an accusation of, oh, you ate on the Sabbath. They were saying that they were harvesting on this. They were harvesting on the Sabbath, or doing the work of harvesting. Now, when Jesus Christ responded to them, he points them back to a situation that happened in 1 Samuel chapter 21, where he said, have you not read, or don't you know, didn't you study this, that when David and his men were hungered, David went to the temple and he spoke to the priest, and the priest gave him the shewbread, which was unlawful for David to eat. He said unlawful, remember that, unlawful for David to eat, and he did eat of it and was blameless. So is Christ comparing his situation with David's situation, where David broke a law, but it was okay for David to break that law? And now is Jesus saying that I am breaking the Sabbath and it's okay for me to break the Sabbath because I'm Lord of the Sabbath? Many people use this situation to show that, Christ was showing here that, I don't have to observe the Sabbath day. I find my rest in Christ because Christ is the Lord of the Sabbath. That's not what Christ was saying. Now, if we take a look at 1 Samuel if we take a look at Leviticus 23, Leviticus 24, verses 7 to 9, we see that Christ pointed to this situation of David because the shewbread was supposed to be gathered together on the Sabbath day and eaten by only the priests. All the shewbread that was put into the sanctuary on each day was supposed to be gathered on the Sabbath day and eaten by the priest. That's why Christ referred to this, because it has a connotation towards the Sabbath day. And it was unlawful for anyone else to eat it. It was called most holy. Now, it was truly unlawful for David to eat this. And we get a better understanding of what Christ was saying in the book of Matthew, as Matthew goes into greater detail about this story. So Christ says to the Pharisees in Matthew chapter 12, verses 1 through 5, he says, David did this which was unlawful. And also, you guys, you go into the temple on the Sabbath day and do that which is unlawful. The disciples and I, all we did was pick corn, which is lawful, and to eat. If you go to Deuteronomy chapter 23, verses 24 to 25, Jesus is referring to this as, Deuteronomy says that you are allowed to. It was a command that was given to the children of Israel, or a permission that was given to the children of Israel, saying that you were allowed to walk through an individual's vineyard and you were allowed to pick corn to eat if you were hungry. You were allowed to or you were allowed to take a cluster of grapes, take the grapes and eat it. But you were not allowed to harvest those things. You were not allowed to bring a sickle or a sack or a basket and to dump these things into a basket and harvest for your own purpose and to carry it on back home so you can eat later. And being that that's not what Christ did, all they did was pluck some corn and begin to eat. They weren't harvesting, so they weren't breaking the Sabbath. So what Christ is saying here, I'm Christ. I'm the Lord of the Sabbath. I'm the one that created the Sabbath. You're speaking to the Son of God. Yet, you hold David. You guys worship David. You hold David in such high esteems. But when David did this, which was unlawful, none of you guys said anything. He's blameless before you guys. And let me tell you this, what David did wasn't blameless to God. David had to pay for that. And 1 Samuel chapter 22, Ahimelech, the one who gave David, first off, David lied to Ahimelech, saying that Saul sent me on a mission that I can't tell anyone, and I'm just hungry. I need you to give me something. Please give me that shewbread that you have. He lied to Ahimelech. David was on the run because Saul was trying to kill him, but he didn't tell Ahimelech that. So Ahimelech the priest was like, you know what, all right, let me help out the king's servant, the king's bodyguard, and give him this food. In the next chapter, the next day, Saul comes to Ahimelech because Saul's servant saw what Ahimelech did. Saul comes to Ahimelech and he says, I heard what it is that you did. You're conspiring against the king. And what does he do? He kills Ahimelech. So the wrath of God fell upon Ahimelech for the sin of David. So David wasn't blameless. David got this man killed because he lied to him. If David had told him the truth, Ahimelech would have been like, you know what, I want no parts of this. I'm not giving you this bread. So David wasn't blameless before God, but to the Pharisees, David was blameless. Now, Christ said in Matthew chapter 12 also that these individuals, they go to the temple and they do that which is unlawful, where they bring man-made traditions. Or do you remember when Jesus Christ had to whip the individuals out of the temple? These individuals go and they charge people for the things that they need for sacrifice, and they make a profit off of the gospel, this tasteful and disgusting profit off of the gospel. They go to the temple and they do that which is unlawful, but yet they're blameless before men. The Pharisees are not getting mad at these individuals, but the Pharisees are getting mad at Christ for doing something which is, according to the word, lawful. He's able to pick something and eat because it's not harvesting. He didn't have a sack and he wasn't dumping it in there. So for those who use the situation to say that we don't have to really observe the Sabbath day, because Jesus Christ himself said, I'm Lord of the Sabbath, and you can use the Sabbath, break the Sabbath. You're making the Sabbath a burden by saying that you're not able, you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that. So Christ is not saying here that, hey, you can go off and do whatever it is that you feel like because David broke the law and I didn't do anything about it. No, that's not what he's saying. He's saying that what I'm doing, this is lawful. If you're hungry, eat something. If like I'm going on a long journey and I have to take a long journey on the Sabbath day and my car runs out of gas, am I going to sit there and not put gas in my car? That doesn't make sense. You're making the Sabbath a burden, and Jesus Christ is not about making the Sabbath a burden. Now, when it comes to working, if I don't have to go to work, I don't have to watch TV and do things that take my mind away from God. So that's what Christ is trying to say. That's the first accusation that they brought against Jesus Christ, and that's how he disquieted it. Look at all these individuals that are breaking the law, and you worship these individuals, but I, Jesus Christ, the Lord of the Sabbath, am doing something which is lawful to do on the Sabbath. You're blaming me, you're accusing me of breaking the Sabbath. That was their first accusation. All right, so the second accusation that was brought against Christ is found in Luke chapter 6, verses 6 through 11, where an individual with a withered right hand came to Christ and asked for healing. Now, the Pharisees, they saw this individual come to Christ looking to be healed, and they waited. They were waiting for Christ to heal this individual so that they can jump in and say, hey, you're breaking the Sabbath. So, they waited. And they waited, and then Christ healed this individual who had a withered right hand and wasn't able to carry on a normal life because, majority of us are right-handed, and, if you're not able to use your dominant hand, how can you carry on a normal life? So, before the Pharisees could even speak, Christ read their hearts because, even though he's Christ, He's still God. He read their hearts. He was able to read and see what it was that they were thinking. And then he responded to them. He responded to them just as in Luke chapter 4, where he read from the book of Isaiah on the Sabbath day about what his mission was to heal the sick and to mend the brokenhearted and spread the gospel, do outreach and all these kinds of things. This was his mission. He reiterated, this is my mission. My mission especially on the Sabbath day. On the Sabbath day is the time to go out and to do these kinds of things. If somebody came to me that was healed and I have the opportunity to heal them, what I'm going to say, somebody's sick and dying, I'm going to say, hey, you wait and hold on till Sunday, till Saturday night. I'm going to come back Saturday night. I'm going to come back Sabbath night. I'm going to come back on Saturday night, and I'm going to give you that healing. No, this was a time for ministry. Healing was a ministry. So that's exactly what it is that we're supposed to be doing on the Sabbath, visiting the sick. If there's someone who is sick who needs a visitation, you're going to say, well, all right, I got to go to church. And after I go to church, and after I spend some time on the Sabbath when the sun goes down, then I'm going to come to you and I'm going to visit you. Or Sunday afternoon, then I'm going to come to you and I'm going to visit you. That's not what this whole Christianity thing is about, and that's not what the Sabbath is about. The Sabbath is a time for ministry, and healing the sick or visiting the sick, doing outreach is a part of that ministry. And that's what Christ said his ministry it was. And that's the reason why Christ read from Isaiah 64 on the Sabbath, explaining his ministry. On the Sabbath, we're meant to do the works of God. We're meant to go out and to help people. We're meant to go out and to visit the sick. We're meant to go out to feed the poor. We're meant to go out and do all these things, because on this day especially, we have all the time to do it. And when we do it, we're going out with Christ to do it. People are seeing Christ. So again, those are the two accusations that were brought against Jesus Christ.